Hello and welcome back to another exciting video. Today's video is from Millionaire Mentor. It's titled The Speech That Every Woke Person Needs to Hear. Comedian Rex Woke SJWs. Okay, I'm really interested in this. A speech every woke person needs to hear. I'm so interested in this, but before we dive into the video today, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Ogechi and this is Ogechi Reaction. Thank you so much to all my new subscribers. Thank you if you're clicking in for the first time or you're seeing my beautiful or pretty face for the first time. Thank you for stopping by. Do want to click on the red subscribe button, like this video, kindly turn on your post notification bell so you get notified. You'll be one of the first person to get notified anytime I drop a new video. Make sure to drop a comment. So it's important you watch through to the end. I'll drop my thoughts during the course of this video and after this video. Thank you to all my returning subscribers and viewers. You guys are amazing. If you're returning to viewer and haven't subscribed yet, I just want to remind you that subscription is actually free. It is free, so kindly do well to just hit on the red subscribe button and also like this video, please. Thank you. Let's not waste any time. Let's just dive straight into this video. Are you ready? I am so ready for this.
You'll be glad you saw this. Konstantin Kisin burst the utopian bubble that seemed to have captured our academia and politics, while not so subtly reminding us all of the defining ideals that we should return to. I think this is one of the most standout clips that has come out of the Oxford Union in the last few years, and it's a rant that exposes where we're going wrong with political correctness, as well as the climate change front. I want to build on what Konstantin said, so let's watch this before we get into it.
I am so tired of talking about woke culture. That's why it's gone too far, more than anything else. No, free speech is not some right-wing reframing of whatever. It's the foundation of Western civilization. Upon this civilization is built, and the Enlightenment values that led to it. I don't have to make the point that has been made by far better people in the past, that the only way to deal with the problem of racism is to treat people on the content of their character and nothing else. And the fact that woke culture seeks to overturn that is a new form of racism that we must all oppose. It means also I will not use this opportunity to say I told you so, as someone who spent the last 5 years warning people in the West that if we continue to erode our culture, if we continue to undermine our confidence in Western values, that our enemies like Vladimir Putin will seek to capitalize on it. I will not make any of those points tonight, at all. Instead, I am not going to talk to those of you who already agree with me, which I imagine is most of you. I'm not going to talk to you because I imagine after everything you've heard tonight, you're going to vote for the proposition. I'm going to confess I will take your vote for granted. Tonight, I am the Labour Party and you are the Red Wall. Now, I want to talk to those of you who are woke and who are open to rational argument. A small minority, I accept. Because one of the tenets of wokeness is, of course, that your feelings matter more than the truth. But I believe in you. I believe there are those of you here who are woke, who are open to rational argument, so let me make one. We are told that your generation cares more than any other about one issue in particular, and that issue is climate change. We're told that many of you suffer from climate anxiety. You wish to save the planet. And for tonight, and tonight only, I will join you. I will join you in worshipping at the feet of Saint Greta of climate change. Let us all accept right here, right now, that we are living through a climate emergency and our stocks of polar bears are running extremely low. I join you in this view. I truly do. Now, what are we to do about this?
So today's video is kind of talking to woke people, right? You know, we know that a lot of woke people, when arguing, they argue with their feelings and not with their, they don't reason properly when arguing. They're arguing with their feelings. So it's important that you actually sit down. If you're a woke person or you know any woke person, it's important that even without this speech, I think whenever there's an argument or there's a conversation, it's important that you are open to the conversation. You don't just argue with your feelings or the way you feel. So this conversation, I'm so interested in this. I want to actually hear what he has to say. I'm not a woke person, okay? But let's just hear this.
Do about this huge problem facing humanity. What can we in Britain do? We can only do one thing. You know why? This country is responsible for 2% of global carbon emissions, which means that if Britain was to sink into the sea right now, it would make absolutely no difference to the issue of climate change. You know why? Because the future of the climate is going to be decided in Asia and in Latin America by poor people who couldn't give a shit about saving the planet. You know why? Because they're poor. Because they're poor.
And for those poor countries, cheap energy is the rope they can use to climb up from the well of poverty. I think you can gauge this with a few simple facts. Take, for example, two countries that have uplifted the most number of people out of poverty in the last 15 years, China and India. These countries have populations over 1.5 billion people and are two of the largest carbon emitters on the planet outside the US. China alone accounts for nearly a third of all of the carbon emissions at 30.9%, and India contributes over 7%. But if that's the cost, what's the gain? China's lifted nearly 800 million people out of poverty in the last few decades, while India pulled up more than 400 million people in just the last 15 years. That's a mighty impressive feat, and one that will reverberate positively across the world as new brains and productive labor contribute to building the future world. On the balance sheet of cost versus benefit, you cannot expect nations down in the dark abyss of poverty to willingly cut down the strongest rope that can pull them up. And you know what? That's exactly what's happening, because China, which is arguably the most important and difficult part of the puzzle, has consistently missed all of the carbon mitigation targets that it set on the international stage. And honestly, anyone who thought China under Xi Jinping's and the Chinese Communist Party would align itself with an almost elite climate action policy coming from the West, they're probably getting the reality check they desperately needed. And I call it elitist because I'm struggling to find another word for it. That's because countries that have developed on the backs of cheap fossil fuel energy now seem to think those in the global south will skip their own growth phase for the sake of the climate. And you know how elitism is impacting actual global policy? Institutions like the World Bank, that practically serve as the arm of the UN climate change agenda, are refusing loans to developing nations if they want to extract and utilize fossil fuels in their countries and provide their citizens with cheap energy. Remember, the energy sector is just short of 90% of all global carbon emissions, and that means this is the area where we'll see the greatest clampdowns. Unfortunately, this means that unless poor countries in Africa or Asia get exceptionally strong leadership, their fossil fuel reserves will forever be buried in the ground and never benefit the desperately poor to lift up to a better future. Though it's still pertinent to mention that countries like Russia and Saudi Arabia, that have plenty of non-renewable energy sources as reserves, have urged the World Bank not to halt the funding of fossil fuel projects for developing nations. All in all, the green energy and net zero experiment is turning out to be a lot more complicated than imagined, and it's hurting a lot of people in the process.
I come from Russia, which is not a poor country, it's a middle-income country. 20% of households in Russia do not have an indoor toilet. What they have is an outdoor toilet. And I don't mean one of those nice portaloos that we get here. I don't even mean a Glastonbury portaloo. I mean a wooden shack with a hole in the ground that holds a collected fermented memory of the last 10,000 visits. How many of you are going to go home tonight and say, let's rip out our bathroom and erect a Siberian shithouse in the back garden? And if you're not, why should they? 120 million people in China do not have enough food. I don't mean that they don't get dessert, I mean they suffer from malnutrition. That means that their immune system is breaking down because they don't have enough food.
Yeah.
You're not going to get them to stay poor. Imagine you're Xi Jinping, the leader of China. When you were 10 years old, there was a revolution, a cultural revolution in your country, and people came and they put your father in prison. Your mother had to denounce him. Your sister killed herself. And you, no longer enjoying the protection of your formerly powerful father, were sent to a village where you lived in a cave house. And here you are, decades later. You have clawed your way up the bloody and greasy pole of Chinese politics to be the undisputed supreme leader of the very Communist Party that destroyed your family. And you know that the main thing you have to do to survive and to stay in power is to deliver the one thing that the people of China want: prosperity, economic growth. Where do you think climate change ranks on Xi Jinping's list of priorities?
Certainly very low, and that's the Achilles heel of the efforts to ameliorate the climate change impact. No one will tell you this. You'll hear leaders in this country or in Europe lecture their population on how far behind they're falling in their carbon mitigation goals, but you'll never see them dare point their finger at China or force them to cooperate in bringing about their utopian visions of the world. That alone should tell people that there's not much substance in the debate. And that's what many of these ideas have in common with the modern woke left, because it sells global visions and is willing to sacrifice everything at their altar to get there. People that understand where this mode of thinking has led to in history probably know where it begins. It begins with the erosion of individual prosperity, of collective security. That's what you're seeing in the climate change debate, because it is ultimately you as the end consumer of the energy supply that will bear the cost of all policies that go wrong. We've seen a trailer of that play out in Europe after the end of the pandemic and the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, with energy prices skyrocketing as a result of Europe's embrace of green energy policies. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people have yet to learn their lesson from history, which means the rest of us will have to smarten up and start calling out this sacrifice of human flourishing to undefined environmentalist ideals.
A third of all children who live in extreme poverty in the world live in India. That means they are starving and dying of preventable disease. Now, about 15 months ago, my wife got pregnant. Not me, because we're old school. And for 9 months, we talked about what our boy would look like, what he might do when he grows up. We looked at baby scans and videos on YouTube about what the fetus looks like at 9 months and 12 months and 20 months. And eventually he was born. And he is this cute little bundle of joy. He's cuter than about 80% of puppies. Right? Now, if you said to me that I had a choice, either my son had a serious risk of starving or dying from a preventable disease in the next year, or I could press a button and he would live. He would go to school.
Which would you choose?
He would bring his first girlfriend home. You'd go to university and graduate and become a woke idiot. And then he'd get a job and get married and have children and become a man. But all I have to do is press this button. And for every day of my son's life, a giant plume of CO2 is going to get released into the atmosphere. Now, you're all very young, and most of you are not parents. Let me tell you something. There is not a parent in the world who would not smash that button so hard their hand bled. You are not going to get these people to stay poor. You're not even going to get them to not want to be richer. And so, I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, there is only one thing we can do in this country to stop climate change, and that is to make scientific and technological breakthroughs that will create the clean energy that is not only clean, but also cheap. And the only thing that wokeness has to offer in exchange is to brainwash bright young minds like you to believe that you are victims, to believe that you have no agency, to believe that what you must do to improve the world is to complain, is to protest, is to throw soup on paintings. And we on this side of the house are not on this side of the house because we do not wish to improve the world. We sit on this side of the house because we know that the way to improve the world is to work, is to create, it is to build.
Yeah.
And the problem with woke culture is that it's trained too many young minds like yours to forget about that.
Those are powerful analogies, and it is that localization of the problem that makes people have a second thought about who's going to pay the price. you can be sure that as much as people might virtue signal on the environmental debate, very few of them will ever make any meaningful change in their own lives and at their own detriment in order to chip in their part in the climate change fight. I've never seen someone say they'd rather walk than take the car because of the environment, or that they would gladly pay twice as much for energy as they're used to paying simply because it's for a worthwhile cost. The moment that problems become more real and proximal to you, rather than being abstract and far away, that's when people's true moral core comes out. I think Konstantin Kisin understands that very well as it regards the environment debate, and this clip is the jolt of reality that many people desperately needed today.
Absolutely, I totally agree with him. I think the more these problems becomes a reality, the more people want to work, especially the woke people. I love the analogy, the last analogy he gave on when his wife got pregnant, and while during the pregnancy they will look at the fetus, they'll watch videos, they'll talk about the kind of life they want for their child, and and when the child is born, he's given two options of either allow the child starve to death, suffer malnutrition, do you get, or he has to press a button that will release certain energy into the air. Which would you pick? Every right-thinking parent, even non-thinking parents, will smash that button in no time. Now, the problem with the woke culture, the woke people, is that they act based on how they are feeling. All they want to do is complain and protest and make noise. The best thing is to work. How do we improve our climate? How do we make things better? Those should be the questions we should be asking, instead of protesting, campaigning, complaining all over the place, thinking with our hearts and not with our heads. These are the right questions we should be asking. Working and finding a way to improve our environment and the climate change should be the go-to, and not doing the opposite. What do you think about this? These were powerful words, and I think everybody needs to watch it. Thank you to the Millionaire Mentor, and for this beautiful video. People needs to see this, and people needs to, because this is related, because the more real this problem becomes, the more we now know, or the more the people now know they need to work instead of complaining. I hope it doesn't get to the point where there is nothing to be done anymore. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Drop your comments, your thoughts, your opinions, or what you think about this video. Do well to like, share, comment. Do well to like, share, subscribe, and turn on your post notification bell so that you get notified anytime I drop a new video. I'll see you in my next episode. Be good.